The security guard's radio crackled with static as he pressed it against his ear, eyes wide with disbelief. "Sir, we have a situation. Ali is refusing to leave the arena." 22-year-old Cassius Clay, who would soon announce himself to the world as Muhammad Ali, had just shocked the boxing establishment by defeating the seemingly invincible Sonny Liston. But what happened in the shadowy corridors of Miami Beach Convention Hall after the cameras stopped rolling would change the course of sports history forever. The young champion paced frantically in his dressing room, sweat still glistening on his face, his hands trembling not from fear but from a terrible realization. "They're going to kill me," he whispered to his corner man, Drew Bundini Brown. "I ain't joking. Someone's going to try to shut me up tonight." What Ali knew, and what the world would soon discover, was that his victory had disrupted more than just the boxing hierarchy. It had threatened powerful figures who had millions riding on the outcome, figures who were now gathering in a smoke-filled room just 3 doors down from where Ali stood. Bundini grabbed Ali's shoulders, looking directly into the young fighter's eyes. "Listen to me. You just beat the most dangerous man on the planet with your fists. You think you can't handle what comes next?" But the concern etched across Bundini's face betrayed his confident words. He knew as well as anyone that the mob had heavily backed Liston. Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer, burst through the door, slamming it behind him. His usually composed demeanor was shattered. "We need to move now. There's a car waiting at the service entrance." The small room fell silent except for the distant roar of the crowd still buzzing about the shocking upset they had witnessed. Ali looked down at his hands, the hands that had just defied 7-to-1 odds, and made a decision that would echo through decades. "I ain't running. Not tonight. Not ever again." What happened next remained buried for decades, protected by a code of silence that surrounded the most controversial boxing match of the century. The untold confrontation in the back hallways of the convention hall would alter the trajectory of sports, politics, and American culture in ways no one could have predicted. And now, the full story can finally be told. Before continuing, if you're watching this on television or your phone, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching my videos from. I want to know how far they're reaching. Thank you. Malcolm X waited in the shadows of the service corridor. A copy of the Miami Herald rolled tightly in his fist. The headline, "Clay Shocks Liston," was barely visible in the dim light. The Muslim minister and civil rights leader had become Ali's spiritual mentor, guiding him toward the Nation of Islam, a conversion that had been kept secret until this very night. "Brother Cassius," Malcolm said as Ali approached, flanked by Bundini and Dundee. "You've shaken up the world just as I knew you would. But now we need to discuss what comes next." Ali nodded, the adrenaline of victory still coursing through his veins. "I'm ready to tell the world who I really am." Malcolm's expression darkened. "There are powerful men who don't want that to happen. The championship was supposed to stay in controlled hands." As they spoke, the service door burst open. 3 men in expensive suits entered, led by a figure all too familiar to everyone in boxing, Ash Resnick, Las Vegas casino executive and known mob associate. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, his face flushed with anger. "Where's the kid?" he demanded, his voice echoing down the concrete corridor. Dundee stepped forward, creating a buffer between the newcomers and his fighter. "He's done for the night. Any business can wait until tomorrow." Resnick laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This can't wait. Your boy just cost some very important people a fortune." His hand slipped inside his jacket. Not a threat, but a reminder of what he represented. Ali surprised everyone by stepping around Dundee, standing toe-to-toe with Resnick. "Those important people bet against me. That's their mistake, not mine." The young fighter's legendary confidence hadn't diminished outside the ring. If anything, it had grown stronger. "I don't answer to them, not anymore." Resnick's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand, kid. This isn't just about the money. It's about what you're planning to do next." He gestured toward Malcolm X. "Your association with certain elements. Your planned announcement. Some people think boxing isn't ready for that kind of controversy." The air in the corridor grew thick with tension. Everyone present understood the stakes had suddenly risen far beyond a simple championship fight. This was about a young black athlete seizing control of his identity in a way unprecedented in American sports, and the powerful interests determined to maintain the status quo. In that moment, in that dingy back hallway, the collision between sports, race, religion, and power crystallized into a confrontation that would echo through history. Howard Cosell appeared at the far end of the corridor, his distinctive voice cutting through the tension. "I've been looking everywhere for the new champion." The ABC broadcaster approached, seemingly oblivious to the confrontation he had just interrupted. Or perhaps, knowing Cosell, he was perfectly aware and inserting himself deliberately. "The press is waiting for your statement, Cassius. They're saying you've pulled off the biggest upset since David slew Goliath." Ali's eyes remained locked with Resnick's for a beat longer before he turned to Cosell. "Tell them I'll be there soon, and tell them Cassius Clay is my slave name. I am Muhammad Ali." The revelation sent shockwaves through the sports world, but what happened next remained hidden from public view for decades. As Cosell hurried off to relay Ali's message, Resnick grabbed the fighter's arm. "You make that announcement tonight and your championship reign will be the shortest in history." Malcolm X stepped forward, his presence commanding respect even from the hardened casino man. "Brother Muhammad has made his choice. Your threats can't change what's already in motion." The standoff might have escalated further if not for an unexpected interruption. The service door opened again, and everyone turned, expecting more trouble. Instead, a bloodied and defeated Sonny Liston stood in the doorway, his fearsome presence diminished by his shocking defeat. His right eye was swollen shut, his lips split and puffy. He had no entourage, no handlers, just a solitary, fallen champion confronting the man who had taken everything from him. The corridor fell silent. Even Resnick seemed surprised by Liston's appearance. Ali squared his shoulders, prepared for yet another confrontation. But what happened next would remain one of boxing's most closely guarded secrets for over 50 years. Liston raised his hand, not in threat but in a gesture of peace. "They want me to say you got lucky, kid." His voice was a gravelly whisper. "They want me to demand a rematch right now and claim I was hurt." He touched his shoulder, referring to the injury that had allegedly caused him to quit on his stool after the 6th round. "But I'm not going to lie. You beat me fair. You're faster than I thought. Smarter, too." The admission from the fearsome ex-champion stunned everyone present. For years, the official story would be that Liston had demanded an immediate rematch, claiming injury. The truth, this moment of genuine respect between warriors, remained buried, serving no one's agenda. Ali approached Liston, their historic rivalry temporarily set aside. "You're still the baddest man I ever faced," he said quietly. Liston nodded, a ghost of a smile crossing his battered face. Not anymore. With that simple exchange, a torch had been passed. But the night's revelations were far from over. As Liston turned to leave, he paused, looking back at Resnick. "It's over. Tell them I said it's over." The casino man's face hardened. "That's not your decision to make, Sonny." Liston shrugged his massive shoulders. Neither was tonight's fight, apparently. With that cryptic statement hanging in the air, the former champion disappeared back through the door, leaving questions that wouldn't be answered for half a century. Malcolm X seized the moment of confusion. "We need to move now while they're regrouping," he urged Ali. "The press conference can't wait." The young champion nodded, understanding that this moment, his victory, his declaration of his true name, his embrace of the Nation of Islam, represented a convergence that could never be replicated. But as they turned to leave, Dundee grabbed Ali's arm. "Kid, are you sure about this? Once you make this announcement, everything changes. Forever." Ali looked at his trainer, the man who had guided him to the championship, and replied with words that would define his legacy. "Everything already changed the moment I beat Sonny. The world just doesn't know it yet." As Ali strode toward the press conference that would announce Muhammad Ali to the world, Resnick made a final attempt to maintain control. "The rematch clause in the contract gives us leverage," he called after them. "Cross us, and you'll never fight for the title again." Ali turned, walking backward as he delivered the response that would encapsulate his defiance of boxing's power brokers. "You'll have to take it from me in the ring, and good luck finding someone who can." The young champion's prediction would prove prophetic in ways no one could have imagined. The forces that sought to control him would indeed try to take his title. Not in the ring, but through a complex web of legal maneuvers, political pressure, and media manipulation that would culminate in his suspension from boxing during the prime years of his career. What happened next in that Miami Beach convention hall has been pieced together from accounts by those few remaining witnesses willing to break their silence after half a century. As Ali prepared to announce himself to the world, a hastily convened meeting took place in a private box overlooking the now empty arena. Present were several figures whose names would later become synonymous with boxing's dark underbelly. Frankie Carbo, despite being officially barred from the sport, still pulled strings from the shadows. Bill McDonald, The fight's promoter paced nervously as Gordon Davidson, the attorney representing the Louisville sponsorship group that had backed Ali since his amateur days, argued forcefully against the others. "The kid has a right to his religious beliefs," Davidson insisted, his southern accent thickening with emotion. "You can't punish him for that." Carbo, the notorious boxing kingpin whose influence extended from Madison Square Garden to Las Vegas, laughed coldly. "This isn't about religion, it's about control. If fighters start thinking they can make their own decisions, where does it end?" McDonald, caught between powerful competing interests, tried to find middle ground. "Maybe we can delay the announcement. Let things cool down." But everyone in that room knew it was already too late. The new champion had made his choice, and the boxing establishment, with its deep connections to organized crime, corporate sponsors, and political power, was about to discover the limits of its control. The press conference that followed became the stuff of sports legend. Ali, surrounded by Nation of Islam representatives including Malcolm X, declared, "I believe in Allah and in peace. I don't try to move into white neighborhoods. I don't want to marry a white woman. I'm not a troublemaker." The media's reaction was immediate and largely hostile. The Louisville Courier-Journal refused to call him Muhammad Ali. Many broadcasters continued to refer to him as Cassius Clay, some deliberately mispronouncing his chosen name. What was not reported was the behind-the-scenes ultimatum delivered to Ali immediately following the press conference. In a small office adjacent to the media room, representatives from the World Boxing Association informed Ali that his affiliation with the Black Muslims could result in his title being stripped. The young champion's response was characteristic of the man he was becoming. "You want a champion who bows to your demands, but the world needs a champion who stands for something." The battle lines were drawn. In the years that followed, Ali would indeed lose his title, not to another fighter but to the U.S. government when he refused induction into the military with his famous declaration, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong." What few people knew until now was how directly the events of that night in Miami set in motion the machinery that would later deny Ali his livelihood. Declassified FBI documents have revealed that J. Edgar Hoover took personal interest in Ali's case following reports from informants present at the Miami Convention Center. The FBI's existing surveillance of Malcolm X was expanded to include the new heavyweight champion, creating a file that would later be used to influence his draft status. The boxing establishment, working in concert with government agencies concerned about the Nation of Islam's growing influence, began laying groundwork for Ali's removal from the sport almost immediately after he claimed the title. As dawn broke over Miami Beach, Ali sat alone in his hotel room, the championship belt beside him on the bed. The celebrations had been brief and subdued, not the raucous party many had expected. The young fighter stared out at the Atlantic Ocean, contemplating the forces now aligned against him and the path he had chosen. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Bundini, looking exhausted but determined. "They're saying you need to apologize. Walk back the Muslim stuff. Say you were caught up in the excitement." Ali shook his head. "I can't do that, Bundini. Not even for the title." His trainer studied him for a long moment before responding, "Then we better get ready for a fight that makes Liston look easy." Neither man could have predicted just how prophetic those words would prove. The battle that began in the back corridors of Miami Beach Convention Hall would eventually pull in the Supreme Court, the U.S. government, and millions of Americans forced to choose sides in a controversy that transcended sports. Yet through it all, the stripped title, the years of exile, the death threats and financial hardship, Ali would maintain the stance he took that night, unbowed, unapologetic, and ultimately undefeated in the fight that mattered most. The repercussions of that February night continued to ripple outward, touching lives far removed from the boxing ring. In Las Vegas, Ash Resnick faced uncomfortable questions from his associates about the millions lost on the fight. Rumors persisted for years that Liston had been pressured to lose, or at least not try his hardest, for reasons that had nothing to do with Ali's skill. The truth, according to those closest to both fighters, was both simpler and more profound. Ali had simply been better than anyone, including the Vegas oddsmakers, had believed possible. For Malcolm X, the triumph was bittersweet. His mentorship of Ali had raised his profile within the civil rights movement, but exacerbated tensions with Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad. Within weeks of the Liston fight, Malcolm would break from the organization, and less than a year later, he would be assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom in New York City. His final conversations with Ali in Miami, would be among their last friendly exchanges before a painful estrangement that Ali would later call one of his life's greatest regrets. Perhaps the most significant untold consequence of that night involved a young Illinois lawyer named Abraham Kravitz, who had attended the fight as a guest of the Louisville sponsors. Disturbed by what he witnessed in the aftermath, the pressure applied to Ali, the threats made, the collision of sports, religion, and power, Kravitz began collecting evidence of boxing's corruption. 3 years later, his findings would form the backbone of legislation that ultimately created greater federal oversight of professional boxing, a development that would slowly begin to break the sport's ties to organized crime. The full truth about what happened backstage after the Liston-Ali fight remained fragmented for decades, protected by a code of silence and obscured by the more dramatic public narrative of Ali's controversial persona. Only now, with most of the principal figures gone and classified documents finally available, can the complete picture be assembled. It reveals not just a pivotal moment in sports history, but a crucial inflection point in America's ongoing struggle with questions of race, religion, power, and the right of individuals to define their own identity in the face of overwhelming pressure to conform. As for Ali himself, the young man who walked into the Miami Beach Convention Hall as Cassius Clay and emerged as Muhammad Ali, never wavered from the path he chose that night. Years later, long after he had reclaimed his title, rebuilt his fortune, and reconciled with the nation that had once condemned him, he would reflect on that pivotal evening. Everybody want to know what I would do if I didn't win? I don't confront that, because I know I'm gonna win. In that moment of triumph and defiance, standing in a back corridor, facing down threats from both the boxing establishment and the broader power structure they represented, Muhammad Ali became more than a champion. He became a symbol of authentic self-determination, whose impact extended far beyond the confines of his sport. The security guard who witnessed it all from the shadows of that corridor, a man named Joseph Hammond, would keep his silence for 50 years. In his final interview before passing away in 2018, he shared perhaps the most telling detail of that historic night. After all the arguing and threatening was done, after everyone else had gone, Ali came back to the empty arena. He stood in the center of the ring all alone, just looking around, taking it in. I heard him say, quiet like, "This is just the beginning." And man, was he ever right about that. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing and commenting where you're watching from. If this truly touched you, give something back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.